as discussed, today we'll be like discussing about committees, teams, groups, and the decision-making process. So, the committees, teams, and groups, all these type of team arrangements is actually is present in the organization. Okay, so we'll check what is committee first. A committee is nothing but a group of person to whom, as a group, some matter is committed. Okay, it is a characteristic of the group action that sets the committee and team apart from the other organizational devices. Although, yeah, we'll not be like seeing not all committees involve group decision making. Okay, because of the variation in the authority assigned to different committees, a lot of confusion has been like resulted based on the nature. Okay, so a committee like committee, there's a lot of other things. Commission, you can call that. There's a lot of commission in organization, task force, teams, self-managing teams, self-managed work groups, or autonomous work groups. There's a lot of groups like provides in the organization, and they help in getting the task done, and also they help in communicating the information from one person to the other, or from one department to the other. They also have a goal to achieve. It's nothing but a group of person, and they're like committed on some issues. It can be a social issue, it can be a organizational issue, it can be a revenue maximization, it can be anything. Okay, it's just like group of person who are working on a matter. Okay, so we'll be like discussing on how the process happens in a committee, and what are the functions of the committee, and how the groups and the committees are like formed. This will be like discussing right now, because the committees, it's kind of varied in nature based on the structure of the committee, based on the people and the issue it is the committee is trying to address. The process, the function, everything differs. Okay. Okay, there is actually a process or stages that you can call during the development of a group or a committee. Okay, so actually there is like five. Okay, the first, before a group is being formed. Okay, before a group is being formed, you're trying to form a organization team. Okay, so already these members will be like present in the other teams, and few people will be like should be hired. So they'll be in the uh, they'll be out of the organization. The HR team is trying to bring them in, and after they bring them in, they are like they should be like trained on the organization methodologies, about the culture and everything. So that's a pre-stage. Okay, the team is not around, but the first stage is forming. Here the committee or a group is being formed. They are like brought together under a single structure or a common platform. Okay, so in the stage, the members of the group get to know each other. Okay, in the second stage, here the members of the group determine the objective of the meeting, and they get to know the differences between them, and sometimes conflict arises. So here when you see this diagram, you see like two people has affiliation towards this person, whereas they both have affiliation to the next person as well. But here this person has affiliation towards only this person, and maybe he doesn't like this person. Okay, so there's a conflict. Okay, so we get to know people in the first stage, and here sometimes we storm, we get, we like some people, we don't like some people. So all this happens in the storming stage. In the norming stage, here the group agrees on the norms and some rules of behavior. Okay, they formulate formal or informal norms, and accordingly they'll assign themselves a leader, or a leader is assigned by external people, and everybody start complying to that particular person. Okay, in the performing stage, the groups get down to the task. Okay, so they start performing. Okay, so though they here you see the structures, one person is like directing the other rest of the team. Here it's not like that. Okay, here everybody has affiliation towards each other, and then everybody like cooperate with each other, and they start performing. Okay. So during the fourth stage, the companies can able to see, the teams or companies are able to see good profits, good improvements. They were able to achieve the tasks. Okay, but the fifth stage is adjourning. This is not actually a stage. Sometimes this fifth stage happens, sometimes it does not. Maybe if you're just forming a team, if you're just forming a team, um, and then to accomplish a task, when the task is done, you will be like um, adjourning the team. I mean, you're dissolving the team, and everybody goes to their own team. Excuse me. This happens, but in some other organization, these teams like survive until the organization survives. Okay. So this adjourning stage is kind of an optional stage where it's only present when the temporary teams are being formed. Okay, this is the stages of group development. It's very important. You have to get to know this. Okay, the same thing I've like explained earlier. Okay, let's get into the functions and formalities of the committees and groups right now. Okay, here you have to understand what is a plural executive. Okay, so he's a person who is part of a line committee. So you know the difference between line and staff, right? Whereas like staff's functions only advisory, whereas line function is they authoritative. They can work in the technical teams. They take care of the staff. They don't take care of the staff function, whereas they take authority, and they're part of the production or HR, production quality such teams. Okay, so here the plural executive is part of this line teams, and they carry out the managerial function like the board of directors. Okay, here they take action, they implement um, the rules, and they tell the rest of the teams what is to be done. Okay, here they direct the line teams. So here like the staff teams, their relationship is not advisory. Okay, here they have complete control and authority over the line teams. Okay, but if the relationship is like only advisory, you can call that as a staff committee. Okay, so this plural executives can be two types of line committee or a staff committee, and when they carry out the complete managerial function like your board of directors, you can call them as a line committee. Otherwise, you can, if their function is only advisory, you can call them as a staff committee. Okay, there are a few types of committees. Okay, I mean these kinds are like formed or identified based on the nature of the committees being formed. So sometimes a committee is like appointed by a government. So you can say right now we have this COVID breakdown, and because of that, the governments are trying to appoint committees to find out how the economy is doing and what would be the precautionary measures that we should be taking, all these things. So there is a formal committee which is appointed by the government, but there are few committees like formed by the youth of the nation, where they help the common people to fight this situation. They help them by providing what do you say, money or the physical work, or they develop a lot of applications where they can able to track like how much distance they are from the affected person, and how can they prevent themselves. So these kind of teams are called as the informal committees. Okay, it's not been appointed by anyone, they just like formed, and it is performing on their own. And next one is permanent committees. These kind of committees will be there forever. So you can like say our UGC is a formal committee. It's appointed by the government, and it's going to be permanent forever, right? It is going to be there. Okay, but there are like few committees which is formed. It will be there only for temporary. For example, all these COVID committees that we were talking, right? It's temporary. When we'll be doing fine over a period of time, these committees will be like dissolved. Okay, so based on the nature of and the situation, these committees are formed. So why we have to have this kind of committees and groups? Okay, so in organizations, you cannot just rely only on the organization structure that you have formed during this organizing function, managerial function, because like sometimes a single person may have too much of power, and they might go wrong as well. So you can't rely only on one person or one team to like focus the organization towards its future. So we have to get knowledge and experience. We have to like derive knowledge and experience from the other people, from the rest of the teams. That's why we are forming this committees. So that is called deliberation and judgment. Okay, so when as I was saying, when one person is like kind of more powerful, and he might take the organization in the wrong path, knowingly or unknowingly. So you can't have too much of authority to one person. Either it can be a CEO or it can be a founder. So that's why we always have a board of directors sitting on top of the founder or the CEO, and they advise them what to do. Okay, and the representation of the interested groups. For example, remember, if you're an organization who's selling maybe baby products, you have to really have a group of moms, so that you can like talk to them how they feel about the product. Okay, so you have to have a small group. You can call them as a focus group as well. So you have to have a small group, can call them as a focus group or interest groups, that represents your the original population. Okay, sometimes maybe like one citizen of a country can be like called out to know about how the government is doing, or one person in an organization, an employee can be called out to understand like how the company is doing, how the HR is like doing, how he or she feels about the company. All these things can be like found. Okay, coordination of departments, plans and policies. Because for example, you're trying to implement a very big thing in your organization, very big policy. You can't just do it just by sending them an email. So you have to form a team or a committee so that it helps in implementation of all these things. Okay, you form a temporary or permanent committee to implement all these things. Okay, so that they can be like they'll be sharing all the information from the top person to the rest of the team in the organization. Okay, and then consolidation of authority. So a committee holds a major power than the authority or power a single person holds. So here you're consolidating the whole power of the people in the committee, so that it has a great power. So whatever the committee is saying, the rest of the people in the organization will definitely follow. And people in the committee who are part of the committee will be like greatly motivated to work, because they get a opportunity to participate in it. Okay. That's the reason all these committees and groups are being formed. So there is a lot of advantages and disadvantages to this as well, because every coin has its two sides. Having a committee can be like kind of a little costlier, because for a small companies, like you have to forgo the time that they spend in their actual work, and you have to like allot them to the committee, and you have to make them work. So this kind of forgoing resources kind of little costlier, and they may result in compromises. Okay, so and this may lead to indecision. Okay, so if a committee is saying uh, uh, like you have to really implement salary cuts in the organization because we're not getting any profits, but not everybody in the committee will be agreeing to it, but still you have to make a compromise, as because everybody, most of the people in the committee says so. Okay, if for example, if only 50% of the committee is saying that, and other 50% saying you have to like really cut down, and the other 50% is saying you don't have to cut down, so here it leads to indecision. You can't even take a decision, because like you don't get a consensus. Okay, this actually like splits the responsibility. Okay, so for example, if you have a leader, that person knows what to do and how to do it. and he owns the task and is responsible for it. But if a committee is there, well, some people will think, okay, that another person will do, that person will think, okay, the next person is going to do. So sometimes the things might get go unnoticed without being done. Okay, and there's always like only few people dominate and few people don't. Okay, that's always there. Like, when you have a setting where people come and interact, there's always a chance that few people get dominated and few people will be dominating. That's actually a law. Okay, that's actually the nature of people. So you can't avoid that. So that's going to be one of the disadvantage as well. Okay, this is a popular sayings which has been like used when you talk about committees. Okay, in a with only in a negative sense. Okay, so it says like a camel is a horse invented by a committee. So it says like you are saying a horse as a camel. Okay, just with very few features adding in. Okay, a committee is made up of unfit selected by the unwilling to do the unnecessary. And the next one is like a committee is a place where the loneliness of the thought is replaced by the togetherness of nothingness. These are the few unpleasant comments that we hear about committees. It's not always true, but I just like want to add it on a funny note here. So how can you make this kind of committees, groups, and teams to perform better? Okay, so managers spend a great deal of time in the committees. The use of committees is due not only to the democratic tradition but also for a growing emphasis on group management and group participation in organizations. In attempting to overcome some of the disadvantages committees, so you have to really make them have some authority. Okay, a committee's authority should be spelled out so that its members know whether the responsibility is to make decisions, is to make recommendations, or merely deliberate or give the top management some insights. So you really have to tell them what they're supposed to do. You have to tell about the authority. Okay, the size and the committee is again very important. Okay, the complexity of the interrelationship greatly increases with the size of the group. If the group is too large, there may not be enough opportunities for adequate communication among its members. But if the group consists of only 2 to 3 people, there is a possibility that few form a coalition against the rest of the people. Okay, so as a general rule, a committee should be large enough to promote deliberation, and but it should not be like very small so that it becomes go understaffed. Okay, so you have to really have a right number of people in the committee. And the next one is membership. The members of the committee should be like carefully selected. If a committee is to be successful, the members must be representative of the interests they are expected to serve. They must also possess the required authority and be able to perform well in the group. Okay, they should have the capacity to communicate well, reach group decisions by integrated group thinking. Okay, so they should have a real try to work as a part of a team. Okay, next one is subject matter. Okay, so here certain committees should be like should be working limited to the subject matter that can be handled in the group decision. For example, if you have few subjects which cannot be like discussed uh, in a group, so maybe like judicial disputes or forming strategy for the company, all these things cannot be like discussed in a group sometimes. So committees will be effective if the agenda and the relevant information are circulated well in advance so that members can study the subject before the meeting. So they should know what the committee is going to deal with. The selection of chairperson is very important. So this chairperson can avoid the waste and drawback of the committees by planning the meeting, preparing the agendas, seeing that the results of the research are like available to people ahead of time before the meetings happening, formulating the definite proposals for a discussion and conducting the meeting, and then finally after the meeting is over, the minutes of the meeting has to be like recorded and then it should be circulated. Okay, so that before the next meeting you'll be able to know what happened previous. Okay, a committee should be like worth its cost. As I told always earlier, that having committee is a very costly affair. Okay, it may be like difficult to count the benefits, especially such as in intangible factors such as morale, enhanced status of the people who's part of the committee, and the committee's value. Okay, so here you really have to make the committees or a group successful by following all this 7 factors. Okay, so then we'll be like discussing of what is the characteristics of a group. So here the group will have one or more goals to achieve. Okay, so here they actually like interact and communicate between the peoples frequently, and they start assuming roles. Okay, here the roles are not defined. You are not said, okay, you're a chairperson, you are the member who will be doing this, and the other person will be doing that. There is no roles has been assigned, but here people assume their roles and they start doing it. Usually these groups are part of the larger group which is present. For example, like imagine you are a company which is manufacturing various products. So one team which is producing one particular product can be called as a group. So that product division will be having multiple groups. So there's a special kind of group that we have as a focus group. We already discussed about this. It actually happens in during your market research. So where people who are the users of the products will be like asked to come together, and they'll be asked to comment on the product or the service that they are using. So that their responses they give is being like taken into account, and then it is analyzed to understand the customer's attitude and perception and their satisfaction level. Okay, and then based on that any uh, re-engineering the product or a service is like being done. Okay, so this focus group is in place like for a long time. Okay, this kind of focus groups are majorly used in Europe. So Germany's public people participated in valuing the forums to determine the long-term energy policies. So that is actually like started long back in Europe. Okay, even in Mexico, the few companies like the government companies like established 6 focus group to understand the performance appraisal process of the companies, and how the compensation is and how the benefits they are providing. Okay, so the public sectors in the Mexico companies have formed these kind of focus groups within the organization to understand how the employees are feeling about them. Okay, so yes, we have like lot of advantages having a group. But what they're trying to do is like they try to help in changing the behavior or attitude of the members within the group, as well as sometimes outside the group as well. Okay, so it changes the behavior and attitudes as well as the values within them, and it make them obedient. So it is used actually for decision making, negotiating, and bargaining. Okay, so this provide some satisfaction for its members, because they feel like, okay, I'm part of something, so they have some affiliation towards it. Okay, usually for example, always like this kind of like been happening in India also, and in most of the developed countries, like when a woman is expecting a baby, so they always said to hang out with the special groups like like her, where other people, other women are also expecting, and their journey like will be like go on until for a minimum of 4 to 5 years. There's a lot of such groups are there like this, and there are some companies who's like doing this in helping all this expecting women or like new moms who get together, and so that they can like discuss the problems that they're facing. Okay, so it's kind of an informal group, and sometimes there are people who are doing this as a business as well. Okay, so next is a team. Okay, so here a team is completely like different. So it can be having a people who are empowered to achieve team goals. Okay, so all these things that we've discussed, these committees, groups, and every whatever the name that you call it, they have a similar traits, because everybody is trying to achieve some goals. Whereas committees are like formed only when it is needed, okay, and it's kind of more formal, whereas group is kind of a little informal, okay, and there you share your beliefs and what you said, your values and like that. Whereas team, it's very formal, where you're selected into this team because of your skills, okay. Here you have a common goal, and you're selected because you have a mm, particular skill, so that you can help your team to achieve this, okay. That's why organization like recruit people into their teams, so that because of the skills you have. You can imagine this company is developing an ERP applications through Python, and then, and if you're a person who's very good in Python and developing applications, you'll be like hired. The same thing, okay. So they set goals and they hold themselves accountable, okay. So here we'll be like discussing about different types of teams and how team building happens, okay. There are 4 different types of teams. First one is a problem solving teams, and next self-managed teams, cross-functional teams, and virtual teams, okay. So here, like in the problem solving teams, what happens is like a group of 5 to 12 employees will be part of the team. They'll be from the same department, and they work for few hours each week. So they'll be working on a different task, but this team is like being formed to solve a particular problem. So like few hours of each week, they'll just work on it to improve the uh, scenario that they are in, okay. They want to solve the problem that they're facing, okay. Next one is a self-managed work teams. Here for example, they don't have any team lead or a manager, but all the members in the team like work on their own. So this team will be having a group of around 10 to 15 people. For example, if the manager quits the organization or he's been like transferred to some other department, so self-managed teams are formed, and they tend to work on their own most of the times. Next one is cross-functional teams. Here, like people from different subject material experts, different work areas work together to accomplish a task. So here, all these people will be in the same hierarchical level. Okay, so you'll not be like appointing the vice president along with this executive. So here, all the people will be in the same level. They'll be working on a task, but they'll be like having a different um, expertise. For example, if you're like developing an application where we want to like predict the disease in a crop, okay. So for in this, you have to really have a software developer, you have to have a AI expert. Here you have to have a person who have studied agriculture, and you have to also have a farmer who's part of this, because that person is going to be the end user, okay. So all these people from different work areas come together and work on this to finish this goal, okay. So that can be an example for cross-functional teams. Next one is virtual teams. So here the teams use this information technology to discuss things and achieve a goal. So most of the teams right now are virtual teams, because along that way, because you take any Indian software company, take USA, okay. So because we outsource, I mean, we are actually like doing their jobs, the outsourced jobs. So all of our clients, mostly in the European and American countries, where they sit and we work for them based on the requirements they give to us. So how do we communicate? We don't have, not all companies send their employees abroad, right? So even if they go, they can't send the whole team. They just send 1 or 2 people, and then they gather the requirements accordingly. They deal the team. Okay, so that's how these virtual teams work. There are a few characteristics of this team. Being in the virtual team, so you don't get to know how they act or how they talk, and also there is the absence of paraverbal and non-verbal cues, but you get to know what they really feel when based on the way they're talking or writing the emails. Okay, and there is limited social context because you don't get to meet them, but um, but these teams have a like very good trait of how they're able to like um, overcome the time and space constraints. Okay, so when you have a virtual team, you don't have to like spend too much of on resources on office space, and then you can like your team can like save the time they travel between office and their home. So all this is kind of little minimized. So actually, this is an effective way of managing teams by having a virtual team. So what is team building? So it's nothing but you're bringing in different people with a different expertise, and so that your team will be having a right mix of skills. Okay, but there is no definite rules for building effective teams. Okay, so team members must be like convinced that the team purpose is worthwhile, meaningful and urgent. Team members should also be selected according to the skills, as I was saying, to achieve the purpose. Okay, the team needs to be guided by the rules for group behavior, such as like regular attendance, confidentiality, discussions based on the facts, and should be like contributing. Goals and required tasks should be like identified early in the team formation. The members should encourage each other through recognition, positive feedback, and rewards. If there is no cohesion, the team should be like really performing better. Okay. So sometimes like a few conflicts occurs when you're part of a team or a committee or a group. So what kind of conflicts will happen? So there'll be like conflicts within a team. So that is called as a interpersonal conflicts. So when there's a conflicts between different teams or different groups, you can call that as a intergroup conflicts. So imagine you're a company which has been acquired by a big company, and you have to really get along with the employees of that big MNC which really hired you. What would you feel? So you always feel that you're part of a different culture, different teams. Okay, so there's always a conflict be there, and sometimes it takes time so that you'll get used to it. But and there is always a conflict between the organization and its environment. Always organizations wants to maximize the revenue. They want to go places, but the environment, sometimes even the internal environment or the external environment will not allow that. So there may be a lot of lack of resources. That because of that you cannot able to like achieve your goal, or sometimes your external environment like the government factors or the natural factors may not like help you. Okay, so and sometimes you'll be having a free riders in your team. So free riders are the individuals who do not contribute their fair share, but they take the rewards. They get a share in the group rewards, but they don't contribute to the team. Okay, so you will be having these kind of people everywhere. Okay, they say they don't even contribute when they're working, but they get marks at the end of the day. So because of that, there's going to be a lot of conflicts. Yes. So these kind of conflicts will occur in any team. So it's actually the responsibility of its members to overcome all this and achieve their goals. Okay, they really have to work on this. So far, like we have discussed what is a group, committee, teams, and how they work. So now we will be like discussing on communication. So what is communication? So every people in the world, they have to communicate to get what they want. So without expressing their feelings, nobody will able to get what they want. Okay, so in organization, communication applies in all phases of managing. Okay, so it is needed for planning, organizing. It is needed even in staffing when you recruit employees. But in leading or directing, it is very much important, because without you cannot lead people without communicating to them. Okay, so it's nothing but a transfer of information from a sender to a receiver, with information being understood by the receiver. So a person who wants to talk, who wants to communicate, can like talk anything, but it has to be like understood by people. Okay, so this actually like this definition is formed based on the communication process model. Okay, so we'll be discussing the communication process model as well here. Okay, so what is the purpose of communication? Why do communication happens in any organization? Because we are trying to affect change to influence action towards the welfare of the enterprise. Okay, we really want to make some changes in the organization, so that you will be able to make profits, or sometimes you will be able to like motivate people to work. So all these things will be happening only if you communicate. Okay, so in any organization, it has to be like communicating to its customers, because the organization should tell its customer what kind of products they provide. It has to like deal with the suppliers, asking them, okay, what kind of raw materials they are using, what they are trying to do, and what are the policies that they are like using in the organization. Okay, it has to communicate with its employees, because it has to tell what the employees should do. So communication is very much essential in any organization. So to thrive, first they have to like thrive. Then if there's any influencing action has to be done, it has to be done through communication only. We have a process here. So it involves the sender. There should be one person to send the communication, and there should be a channel where the communication should be like transformed, and there should be some person at the end to receive it. So for example, you can like take there is a communication between the CEO and the vice president. So you need a CEO to talk, and then there's a transmission. Maybe imagine they are like chatting over messenger in their IM in their company, or imagine they're like talking over a phone, so that particular message is being transmitted to the to an IM or through a phone call. So that is a channel, and the vice president is the receiver, because that person is receiving. This is the communication process model. So here there should be thought. What it says, like there should be thought by a person who's sending the communication, and that has to be like encoded. Okay, the person has to like process it, and then to talk about it, and then that message has to be like transmit, and then it reaches the receiver here, but the receiver should be able to receive it. Okay, sometimes we'll be like physically present, and sometimes we will not be like mentally present. Okay, that because that person will be like submerged in some other thoughts. For example, right now a person is thinking about a football game or a cricket match, so he will not be able to pay sufficient attention to what is being said right now. Okay, this happens in the same. Imagine there's a meeting happening in your organization about your inventory, and you're thinking about something else, about what are you going to do in the evening, or what are you going to do in the weekend. So you'll not be able to receive it proper. So you should be in the right state to receive it proper, and then you have to able to break down that, decode it, and then get into your mind, and then you finally understand it. Okay. So here the understanding is in the mind of both sender and the receiver. Person with closed minds will normally not completely understand messages, especially if the information is contrary to their value system. Okay, so you have to really understand it, and you have to really understand in the way that the sender has like sent you the message. Okay, and in this process there is always a noise. Okay, so if here the noise happens, it can be like kind of anything which hinders the communication. It can be a for example, you are sending an email, and if the encoding can be like faulty in your internet email system, then what happens? So that can be called as a noise. So it's not only the disturbance that you see as physical disturbance, it can be like anything. Okay, and then there should be feedback. So whatever that the sender receives, you should understand. And if you don't agree with that, you should not be like idle. You should talk back. You should really give a feedback about what he actually understood, and you should express his thoughts to the sender. Okay, then the sender receives the communication saying, okay, whatever that I've told to my receiver, he has understood it. And if there's difference of opinion, they discuss, they provide feedback, and the cycle continues. Okay. Is not hindering communication. That's what like we discussed a little. So it can be like anything, anything which actually hinders your communication, which stops your communication from understanding for your receiver. You can call that as a noise. Okay. It can be because of the ambiguous symbol. Sometimes the encoding, if you're like sending a message, for example, usually like in military, people don't just like communicate like how we communicate. They actually decode a message, encode a message, and then send it, and then the receiving team will encode it. Sorry, the people who sending will encode it and the receiving team will decode it. So if there is any mistake in encoding, that's actually a noise. Okay, if you can't able to send an email because some error, that is actually a noise. Okay, so if you have a problem in your telephone system and if you're not able to hear what other person is saying because of poor signal, that is a noise. And if you are like dreaming and then you couldn't pay attention to what other person is saying, you have something in your mind, that is a noise. Okay, so if you are like little disturbed or depressed to think, so here right now the sender has a noise. Usually people always think when a person cannot understand, that is a noise. It's not like that. If a person cannot think, whoever was sending the message, you can call that as a noise. Okay. Yeah, we discussed about this. And okay, situational factors and organizational factors in communication. Okay, we actually are very fortunate to live in a country where we can talk whatever we want. Okay, we have a freedom to speak. We have freedom to write. Yes, I believe so because being in a democratic nation. But imagine there are a few countries like North Korea, like they don't have freedom to speak whatever they want. You can't even imagine that these people in this country don't have access to internet. They actually have limited access to internet. To use internet, you have to be a researcher and you have to get permission from the government to use the internet. So there's a lot of other things as well. So since we being in this kind of democratic country, I think we cannot able to understand this. Okay, so there's a lot of other factors like sociological, legal, political factors, economic factors comes in the external environment. Okay, a repressive political environment will inhibit the free flow of communication. So sometimes a geographic distance, if you are like present in the different parts of the country or different parts of the world, sometimes you have a problem in communicating if you want to communicate over face to face. Even that is possible, but still if you want them in person, it's really difficult. Okay. Rather within an organization, sometimes the organization structure. Because if you are a manager and you want to talk to the vice president, sometimes it might be difficult. Okay, and because of this managerial process or the organization structure that you have, there might be a problem in communicating what you're saying to the top management. So that is one of an example for internal environment. So communication in the organization should be like very much flowing faster than earlier, because like today things have been changing. Now we live in the internet era where we have information overload. Okay, so because of this, managers like doesn't know what are the information that they should take into account. So right now people say there's going to be a great economic recession because of the because of this lockdown. But sometimes people believe, okay, this is just a resting phase where people can work on their own, and most of the people believe there's going to be a rise in startups after this lockdown, because after every recession, always the rise of startups, the number of startups is increasing. That has been like proven in the previous economic recession as well. Okay, WhatsApp came up after our 2008 2010 economic uh, depression. Okay, so you can't even know. So the manager really don't know what kind of information they should take. So here, the organization should come in and pitch in and help them, help the managers to channelize their information, and they should tell like what kind of information the manager should be passing on to this team. Okay. And there are different types of communication flows within an organization. First one is downward communication, when the CEO talks about his forecast for the future for the organization, and he's like trying to communicate this to the rest of the organization. You can call that as a downward communication because it's coming from the top to bottom in the organization. Because he is in the bottom of the organization structure and he is trying to communicate to the top management. So it is an upward communication. And we have crosswise communication. And this is of two types: horizontal communication and diagonal communication. So, so when a communication happens between the people on the same levels, for example, vice president of sales when was trying to talk to vice president of HR about what's happening in the organization, that you can call this a horizontal communication, whereas diagonal communication involves people from different levels. Okay, that doesn't mean that you're talking to your manager. Okay, but because you are in the same team. So when someone in your team is talking to the imagine you are in the production team and you're just a common employee, production executive, and you're trying to talk to the vice president of sales. So here you're talking to a person from in a different level, but you're not directly reporting to him. Okay, so that you can call as a diagonal communication. So what kind of communications that you can like do? So you can like do a written communications in organizations. Most of the times people write emails, write policies, and then they send it to through email, or they are published in the website and share the links. Okay, so that is the type of written communication. And next one is a non-oral communication, where like people talk and the rest of the people listen. So it can be a face-to-face meetings. Sometimes the companies organize seminars, meetings, like that. Sometimes if the people are like geographically distributed, in case of MNCs, they do a webinar. Okay, within the organization they host meetings, online meetings. Okay, that is so oral communication is possible for communication. Next one is non-verbal communication. Okay, so people communicate in different ways apart from your formal written and oral communications. So like through facial expressions and body gestures. So non-verbal communication is expected to support the verbal, but it does not always do so. Sometimes sometimes like when someone is trying to like say about what he's trying to do, and if he's pound a fist on a table, what happens? You think, okay, that person is being uh, uh, more firm about what he's trying to say. So, and if you like uh, saying happy message to employees, and you don't show the happiness in your face, there is nothing, right? So that's what. So whatever that you're trying to communicate should go in with your non-verbal expressions as well. Okay, because actions speak louder than the words. Okay, we have one more important person in this communication. So this is actually called as ombudsperson. So this is actually a role of a employee who investigates the concerns and welfare of the employee. Okay, so imagine the CEO appoints a person, a team, to go and identify how the employees are feeling about the organization, and how do they like see their future in the organization. So that person or that team is called as a ombudsperson. Okay, they investigate the employees concern and provide feedback to the top management through upward communication. So this type of methodology is actually first started in Sweden. Okay, so in Sweden, the government actually appointed ombudsperson to really identify what happens in the state, so that and what how do the citizens feel about the government, all these things. To understand all these things, Sweden appoints an ombudsperson. Okay, and after that US appointed this kind of ombudspersons in their organizations to know what is really happening in the organization, and to know the employee feedback. Okay. So there are a lot of channels of communication. So it can be like an oral, it can be a written, or you can just write an email. So earlier we were discussing about oral and written. So either you can write or you can talk. So but how are you going to transmit what you're talking? Okay, in case of a MNC present in different geographical locations, even if you're talking, you need a medium of a channel where you can like transport your message. So it can be a recorded message, video recording, which where where the CEO or the founder is trying to address. Okay. So even like yesterday, there is a company called Blazer, which is an MNC in Europe. They have their offices throughout the globe. They hosted a webinar to all its employees, dealers and distributors, suppliers, everybody, so that uh, they everybody will be in on the right hold during this breakdown, during this lockdown. Okay, so all this kind of it's actually oral communication, but it's not happening on face to face, it's just happening through an online webinar. Okay, so they conducted this webinar through Adobe Connect. It's one of a channel. Okay, it's Adobe Connect is a platform where it is you hosted to, where it is you used to like host live webinars. Okay, it's one of the product of Adobe. Okay, like your Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Reader. Okay, so what are the breakdowns or barriers that you might have in your communication? So if you don't plan well, you don't know what to talk, you will be having this problem. And if you have some assumptions, you assume things, and if you're not like clarifying it, and if you're communicating it, yes, that will be a problem. And if you're like trying to communicate something, and but the receiver didn't understand it, you can call that as a problem that always happens in the government. So whatever the government says, we never try to understand it in the right way. Even if you understand, there's always people on the other end who tries to tell us what the government is doing wrong. Okay, so that kind of things are called a semantic distortion. Okay, and if you're like not expressing messages in the right way, is that is one of a barrier. And in the international environment, you can just like you can't talk whatever you want. And even if you can talk, there's always a language barrier. There's always like, imagine you're in China, and most of the Chinese can understand English, but not everybody. So doing business with them is always difficult, because here our major languages in India are Hindi, and in the north and in the south we have always different languages. Right, there's always communication barriers in the international environment. And sometimes when you like transmit your message, there's always a loss, because you can't always express whatever that you have in your mind. And if you are like trying to communicate this to vice president, and the vice president tells it to the manager, on the way of transmission, there's always a loss. It never goes to the last person as the same. And because it's not only a problem of transmission and the retention also, because people whatever they hear they cannot remember as 100% what is being said. There's always a different version, right? If you've like played some kind of game related to that, you should really know this. Okay, and people always have a poor listening skills. We always don't try to listen to understand. We always like try to talk back, right? And we always evaluate or like judge the information, or judge the person who's telling this information. So because of that, we have a lot of barriers. And impersonal communication, you just like deliver the message, you don't feel it. Okay, if you don't put your heart into the message what you're saying, uh, that is considered as one of the barriers, because people who's listening to it may not listen to it. And if you don't trust the person who's like sending the message or the person who's receiving the message, you can't like communicate right. And insufficient period for adjustment to change. For example, imagine right now everybody's working virtual and they have to like have meetings virtually, and and you're a person who's always like to have face-to-face interaction, and you don't like to have a virtual meeting. What happened? You can't able to, you will miss this kind of meetings, and because you don't like it, even if you're like compelled to attend that, you will not understand it, and you will not able to get a hold of how this online meetings works, right? And the last one is information overload. In this internet, there's a lot of data, too many information, and we really don't know what kind of information we should read, we should see or watch. So even if you like spend your whole lifetime, you cannot like listen to or watch all the YouTube videos. Even if you whole lifetime watch your YouTube videos, you can't you can't finish the YouTube, because that many content is being like uploaded every time. So there are other communication barriers. Selective perception. People tend to perceive what they expect to perceive. So we just want to hear what we want to hear. We don't listen to, we don't completely listen to the rest of them. And the attitude. So sometimes if a person who's delivering the message has attitude, we always look into that. We don't really get into the message, and sometimes it's other way around too. And the difference in status and power. So for example, if there is if a low level employees like try to convey some message to the CEO, he may not even listen. He don't even spend time on it, because he thinks, okay, it doesn't have a status or a power to communicate to me. Even that, if he's writing an email, that email may or may not reach a CEO, because it will be all the emails the CEO sees is being screened by his secretary, right? So the power or the status of the receiver also is one of a barrier. The information passing through several levels in the organization tends to be distorted. Yes. So from the top, when the information comes to the low level employee, it completely gets distorted, and sometimes it actually becomes the opposite of what the employee is trying to say. So how we can like improve the communication, what we're trying to do. So actually, I'll be sharing your textbook where you'll be like having a few tips. Okay. So guidelines for improving the communication. First one is clarify the purpose of message. Okay, so you have to identify why the message is being sent, and you have to use intelligible encoding. Okay, and then you have to consider, and then the sender also should consider the receiver's need. Okay, fifth one is using appropriate tone and language. You should be like you should not be like ordering when you're communicating. You should use the appropriate tone, and you have to always get feedback as in our communication process model. And you have to consider receivers emotions and motivations. You should know how the receiver should be able to understand, and how you should be able to motivate them when they're not feeling like to listen. And eighth one is like actual listening. The receiver should actually like listen. Okay, so I'll be like sharing text to you. Okay, regarding this, you can like read it and understand. It's very easy. Okay. And electronic media in communication. So actually we are having this conversation through electronic media actually. So I think you really understand what it is. The first one is telecommunication, when you are able to like communicate with people over phone. You can call that as a telecommunication, where telecommunication mostly happens between two people. In teleconferencing is like when a group of people which interact with each other through audio and video, you can call that as teleconferencing. And when you use computers for sending a text, you can call that as um, use of computers for information handling. So it's nothing but doing Skype, instant messaging. All organizations will be having IMs. Okay. So that's all we have. So we have been like discussing what is communication, what are the modes of communication, what is this process, how what are the advantages and disadvantages like we have with information overload.